Hey there, true believers, this is Chef Jack with another round of Marvel vs. DC comic book reviews. By now you've seen enough of these videos from us that you know how this is going to work, so I don't really have to explain the rules. Let's get right to it. This time around I'm taking a look at the following. Batgirl number 16. Batman Beyond number 13. Black Panther number 166. Blue Beetle number 14. Captain Marvel 125. Daredevil number 27. Despicable Deadpool number 287. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 30. Hulk number 11. The Immortal Iron Fists number 6. Justice League of America number 16. Mr. Miracle number 3. New Superman number 16. Suicide Squad number 27, Uncanny Avengers number 28, and lastly, X-Men Blue number 13. The one-star books are the worst of the lot for this week. These are trash. These are the ones you really shouldn't waste your time reading. Despicable Deadpool number 287. If you're anything like me, you're probably burned out on Deadpool by this point. I mean, Lord knows I have to struggle to make myself read these things, much less force myself to review them objectively. It would just be so easy to go the route of saying, well, of course it's going to suck. It's Deadpool. What do you expect? But, you know, that's how other YouTube comic book reviewers operate, not me. So with that in mind, this comic book sucked. The entire issue was bad. Jerry Dugan took an already unlikable fucktard of a character and made him worse. It wasn't as painful to read as Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, but boy howdy was this close. You know, there was no plot here. It was just basically one long running fight scene. I know it built into the previous Strife, you know, wants Cable out of the way thing, but it was pointless combat. And even the ending, even the climax, it just seemed all too convenient. It's not a good issue, folks. Stay away from it. Immortal Iron Fist number 6. I think I finally have it figured out. This book is actually trying to be funny, while at the same time trying to be empowering to one group that absolutely does not need any more support from anybody. Tween girls. I say that because, you know, when you look at social encouragement programs for, say, junior high school students, it's all about the girls. Boys are basically left to sink or swim on their own. And so, in the end, the empowering aspects of this comic book just come off as condescending and sexist against girls, believe it or not. As for the comic itself, the dialogue is horrible. The action is absolutely ridiculous and unbelievable. The artwork is terrible. Especially the weird portrayal of how the Iron Fist power is supposed to work. It doesn't work that way, guys. Haven't you ever read? Go back and look at the old Iron Fist issues, please. Jesus God, before they hire another artist who wants to do this shit. This was horrible. The comic books that are awarded 2 stars are bad. They may have 1 or 2 redeeming features that save them from going on the 1-star list, but they're still probably not worth your time reading. Captain Marvel number 125. This is one of the Marvel Legacy books, of course, and it's supposed to give new readers a jumping on point where they don't feel quite lost in the continuity. Unfortunately, Captain Marvel 125 is a complete slog to get through. It's like wading through mud. Carol Danvers' supporting cast has become so large and so clunky that it's become impossible to tell the players without a scorecard. The story in this issue doesn't do enough to cut through the noise, and on top of it all, the plot seems to be directionless and vague. I mean, seriously, beyond Carol wants to find all of her friends again, and as an aside, since when does Carol Danvers have friends? I thought she just had hangers-on and puppets. You know what? Never mind. Let's move on. You know, the point is, there's not a lot of meat on this bone. It's a bit refreshing, of course, to see Carol Danvers portrayed as bland and flat instead of a raging bitch all the time, but still, it's not that satisfying. The books that get 3 stars aren't all that good, but on the other hand, they're not all that bad either. Sure, go ahead and read them. However, get the 4 and 5-star books first. Batgirl number 16. I want to start this review by noting one good thing this issue has going for it. I've been quietly predicting that the Red Queen was going to end up being Ainsley because she was the obvious choice. And it's not Ainsley. I'm glad they avoided the cliché predictable villain. In addition, there are some really fantastic one-liners in here. Unfortunately, there's a lot more that just doesn't make sense. The logical sequence of events doesn't play out. So far, 3 out of 4 issues of this story arc have been completed, and we have yet to see or really hear from the Red Queen outside of a single panel at the end of Batgirl number 14, and we still have no idea why she's seeking revenge against anybody. There's just too many plot threads hanging loose, and it's beginning to look like they're going to rush to the end if they want them all tied together, and that's never a good thing. Blue Beetle number 14. This issue feels a lot like the first issue of a new series instead of the 14th issue of an established series, and I think it's because Chris Sabella realized that the same thing about Blue Beetle as I did a long time ago. The Blue Beetle is a really popular character who has a really sucky comic book. Sabella seems to have decided to start out of the gate by re-establishing just who all these characters are and giving them a direction for this final story arc in the series. A lot of this issue is spent showing us how Jaime and his friends spend their time and what they're concerned with. We get to see him training with Ted Kord and how he's trying to have as much of a normal life as possible. It's an establishment issue, giving us a foundation for things to come. Unfortunately, a lot of this establishing characterization, quote-unquote, was right out of left field. I mean, why were Paco and Brenda acting like that? Why was their interaction so inconsistent? At the end of the day, this was not a bad issue, but it had far too many small problems for it to be called a good issue. Hulk number 11. As odd as this is going to sound, I think this was a step forward for the Jennifer Walters Grey Hulk title. It's a throwback to the John Byrne series, with, lots of jokes, lots of fourth wall breaks, lots of attempted humor. Of course, it all still features a PTS-ridden Jennifer Walters who drags everything around her down, who relies on a lot of blatant man-hating sexism and who relies on far too many cliches. So, hardly a perfect issue, guys. But, it was better than what we've seen before. Maybe if the creative team can get this ball rolling correctly and continue the balancing act between mopey Jennifer and lighthearted Jennifer and dump all the bullshit sexism, maybe then we can have a better She-Hulk in the future. Justice League of America number 16. I have to be honest, the Microverse story is starting to get a bit much, even for, a huge Atom fan like me. I love the work that Orlando and Watanabe have been pumping out, but this issue sort of pushed my buttons one too many times. I mean, first, this is the second issue with a story within a story, which really should have been wrapped up in last issue. I had no problem at all with it last issue. And to be honest, were I reading the Atom instead of the Justice League, I wouldn't really have a complaint. But I'm reading the Justice League. The League only shows up in the very last page of this particular issue. And, being a cameo in your own book is never a good thing. I suspect that once this story is collected into a trade paperback, the problem I'm griping out is going to disappear. But for now, the overlong story within a story just drags the entire thing down and makes the story arc boring. Suicide Squad number 27. This issue's a bit of a mixed bag. There are a couple of interesting ideas here, but there's absolutely no consistency when it comes to story quality or even whether or not the plot makes sense. I keep finding myself wondering why the hell hasn't Katana kicked Amanda Waller's ass all over the countryside for her personal treachery. Katana's supposed to be this strong, honorable person, but she's just knuckling under here, and as it is, she serves no damn purpose at all other than to be someone that Waller can monologue at. As for the artwork, it's okay, but, nothing to complain about by any means. It doesn't jump out at you either. And that there were a few sequences where I felt that something was missing, like there were scenes that had been edited out. If it was a movie, they'd be on the cutting room floor, as they say. It's hard to describe. We're talking about comic books. Obviously, the analogy doesn't fit, but I hope you get the idea. It tried hard. It hit on some cylinders, but on others, it just blew out. It just couldn't score better than this. X-Men Blue number 13. This is the second part of the Mojo Worldwide storyline, and it stumbles a little by reducing the X-Men Blue team to a cameo appearance in their own title. Which, as I said back when I was reviewing the Justice League, that's never a good thing. Also, this issue might well have the cheapest shock value death I have ever seen in a comic book in a long time. I get the writers trying to make Mojo seem like a legitimate threat by having him casually murder somebody, but that trick only works if we give a shit about who the dead guy is. You know, hey, now we know why Bloodstorm was added to the title. Blammo. Shortest X-Men run since the original Thunderbird. Now, that said, there are some encouraging signs that this crossover hasn't completely gone off the rails, at least not yet, so let's keep all our fingers crossed. The books that get 4 stars are the good ones. These are the ones that we recommend. They may have 1 or 2 small problems here or there, but nothing that takes away the enjoyment or the quality of the comic book. New Superman number 16. This issue was an indictment of DC Comics' unfortunate history of racism, but unlike a lot of the SJW-oriented message books, this addresses the issue with a complexity and a depth rather than just tossing out slogans like you might see over at Marvel. The All-Yang is a villain, sure, and his motives are, you know, suspect because he's a villain, but the points he makes are absolutely valid. The racist depictions of minorities seen in the early DC comic books were part of the cultural landscape of the time. And, you know, addressing it cannot be avoided at all. This just adds to the overall social and political complexity of the entire title. Chinese Superman so far has faced down on pro-democracy radicals, pro-government extremists, and now anti-Western conspirators, and he did it all in a balanced manner. This title has integrated political questions while resisting the temptation to say, and people who think this way are evil. If you disagree with me, you're evil. They avoided doing that. As a character, New Superman is constantly trying to figure out how to do the right thing regardless of what other people are telling him, and that is a good thing, folks. Uncanny Avengers number 28. I must admit, I enjoyed the hell out of this issue. This is the first Avengers Legacy issue, and I thought it actually did a pretty good job at introducing us to who these characters were, what they were about, and then setting the stage for future issues. The subplot with the Human Torch dealing with being the inheritor of the Richards family fortune was interesting. Rogue's struggle with self-doubts regarding her leadership skills was believable, but the highlight of the issue was the catch-up conversation between Beast and Wonder Man. This scene gave readers who were new to the title, or even new to the Avengers, a good jumping-on point, while tossing some nostalgic fan service to the old-time readers. There wasn't a single moment that seemed boring or dragged down, you know, and certainly there was no identity politics here. It was just good old-fashioned storytelling. Out of all the books that I'm reviewing this time around, the 5-star books are the best. They may not be perfect, but they are pretty damn close. Batman Beyond number 13. You know, for the most part, this series has been all about integrating elements of the Batman Beyond universe from the animated series into the greater DC Comics universe, as well as the other way around. And it's done pretty consistently well, but it's, you know, it's been a good book. It's never quite been good for, you know, consistent 5-star reviews, though. I mean, sure, every once in a while, but mostly it's been 3 and 4 stars all the way. This time, the artistry with which this self-contained 3-part story has been pulled off, it's amazing. If they can keep this up, they're never going to have a non-5-star book. This felt like an episode of the old cartoon, and it unwound, and it finally resolved its story in the same fantastic way that the cartoon would during its best episodes. It reminded me of why I was a fan of Batman Beyond in the first place. Black Panther number 166. I can't help it, guys. My first reaction to this issue was, where the fuck has Ta-Nehisi Coates been hiding this level of writing talent? If he's capable of producing a story like this one, why hasn't he been doing it all the time? I mean, seriously, that was my reaction. This story came out of nowhere and it blindsided me. Coates takes Ulysses' claw in hand and recreates this villain into one of the most original, thought-provoking, and interesting ways I have ever seen a villain reconstruction story. It is such an enthralling pitch that I absolutely do not mind that the otherwise bland Avengers of the New World storyline was delayed by an issue. This is an astonishing rebirth for a classic Marvel villain that a lot of people think of as a lame C-list also-ran. Let me tell you, folks, this Ulysses Claw is not a C-lister, and he is absolutely not an also-ran. I gotta hand it to Coates. He performed a minor miracle with this issue. Daredevil number 27. Matt Murdock spends the majority of this issue stuck in a sewer-like prison, nearly beaten to death, and it's fantastic. Writer Charles Soule has taken the relationship between Daredevil and Blindspot to its logical conclusion. The plot of this issue is made up of twists, turns, psychological horror, and suspense. In addition, there's been an evolution of the art style before our very eyes, and it seems to be aiming to emulate some of John Romita's best work on the title. It also combines into a perfect Daredevil issue with just enough action and just enough suspense and just enough of that ninja action that you really love when Daredevil gets into it. It was as close to a perfect Daredevil issue as you can get, honestly. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 30. Okay, guys, I cannot talk about this issue without talking about the plot, so if you're not into spoilers, walk away now. I mean it. If you're still there, I'm about to start talking about the plot. Okay? So, this issue is an example of how to do a superhero crossover fight correctly. Neither Hal Jordan nor Superman is out of character or treated as a villain. There isn't some overly long, drawn-out, company-wide crossover that's dragged out for a year. It isn't just it's just a single, fun, action-packed issue that is absolutely satisfying to read from the first page to the last page. There's even a bunch of scenes which clearly demonstrate that Clark and Hal are true friends and have great respect for each other. But the best thing, in my opinion, is that this issue demonstrates just how many problems even a fully trained, experienced, full-power Green Lantern would have handling a Kryptonian who himself is going full out in a fight. It's a great issue, and it's a fun issue. Mr. Miracle number 3. I'm beginning to feel utterly unqualified to review this series. I mean, what King and Gerard here and the other people working on this title are producing is head and shoulders above any other comic book I've read in, I don't know, I've got no idea. Maybe since The Watchmen or maybe V for Vendetta. This story is chilling and it's effective. It is horrifyingly unrelenting in its brutality, in its complexity. It is deep. The art is amazing. I almost said the art is beautiful, but I can't quite make myself apply the word beautiful to the things that Gerard is showing us on these pages. This is a psychological horror story, and it's fear and it's despair done so perfectly well that you feel it in your bones. Seriously, guys, just buy this title. You are not going to regret it. And now for the roundup and the final scores. This time around, DC Comics had 0 1-star books, 0 2-star books, 4 3-star books, 1 4-star book, and 3 5-star books. Each star is worth 1 point, which gave DC a score of 31 points. I reviewed 8 issues from DC, which brings their average score per issue to 3.87. Marvel Comics, on the other hand, had 2 1-star books, 1 2-star book, 2 3-star books, 1 4-star book, and 2 5-star books. As always, each star is worth 1 point, giving Marvel a score of 24 points. I reviewed 8 issues from Marvel for an average score of 3.0 points. And so once again, to nobody's real surprise, DC Comics wins the day, despite what I honestly thought were a couple of really good tries by Marvel at doing a decent comic book once again. Who knows? Better luck next time, Marvel. But what did you think, true believers? Was I right about these books? Was I wrong about these books? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you agree in part? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked what I did here, go ahead and hit like, hit share, hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you do subscribe, don't forget that little notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. If you really like what we're doing here and you want to help us keep the lights on and the trainer rolling, we have a VIDME page and a Patreon page linked down below. Hop on over, drop a couple of bucks in the bucket. We appreciate any and all assistance. But even if you don't, I appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much for watching.